date with the process for appointing a chairman for Ofcom.
My Lords, this report is packed full of useful insights into the challenges facing contemporary journalism. I'm especially pleased to see, at last, if rather belatedly, that the problem of a lack of diversity has been expanded beyond representation to include the urgent need for diversity of opinion. The problem of groupthink for journalistic impartiality is well described in the report. I agree with Sir Robbie Gibb that too often journalists are stuck in echo chambers and therefore misread the mood of the country, as they did with Brexit, too often mistaking Twitter for public opinion. So I'm glad the report notes the problem of confirmation bias. However, identifying a problem doesn't solve it. I'm not so convinced by the proposed solution of getting Ofcom to collect data on a larger number of demographic characteristics of staff, such as socio-economic backgrounds, because it just seems to me that that's another version of representational identity headcounting that misses the point. I'm more persuaded by the report's focus on the problem of over-academicised journalistic profession. The tried and tested tradition of school leavers joining local newspapers as apprentices in the heart of communities, learning their trade by covering, for example, court cases and council meetings, would do more than valuably restoring journalism's key role of holding all public bodies to account. It might also drag journalism out of its rarefied ivory tower, and it might save us from the cack-handed reportage of London media venturing into red wall areas like anthropologists discovering new exotic tribes. But one key area I do have qualms about is the treatment of the public's mistrust of media institutions. I'm squeamish about the seeming assumption that the problem here is one of the public's ignorance. The disproportionate influence in the report on media literacy as a vehicle for restoring trust implies it's the public that needs educating, as though the media is blameless. This becomes clearer in the discussion on how to train citizens to detect misinformation. Surely it's more complicated than that, especially as the term misinformation has increasingly little to do with factual accuracy and is regularly weaponised to delegitimise opinions that journalists and politicians deem dangerous, offensive, or that simply don't fit into a narrow official narrative. Although the report and the government's response reassuringly stress the importance of a free press, I'd say that media freedom has rarely confronted so many censorious trends. And they are often in the guise of fighting misinformation and fake news. And that's where we see the real threat to free media. Take Ofcom's coronavirus guidance. It heavily-handedly instructed broadcasters not to feature stories that A, undermined people's trust in the advice of mainstream sources, or B, that would deter audiences from following official rules. Surely this veers very close to state-endorsed suppression of dissent, as though the science was settled and that was it. And it turns the media into a behaviour modification scheme. As MP Steve Baker noted, Ofcom effectively labelled any kind of rational criticism as unscientific misinformation. This may explain a conformity of narrative from media outlets throughout the pandemic that only differed from one another in the levels of fear and anxiety they whipped up. Meanwhile, the government has encouraged big tech to become a truth finder general in recent months in relation to alleged misinformation, at great cost to free speech, transparency, and ultimately it denied access to a wide range of opinions and evidence that was made available to either the public or indeed to journalists. Look at the way that those who tried to raise the possibility of a Wuhan lab leak had their social media accounts suspended. Respected experts were lumped together with cranky 5G obsessives as agents of misinformation. Interviews and evidence were removed by Facebook. This, in turn, stopped journalists investigating what is now considered as a crucial line of inquiry, but rather too late, the evidence is gone. And then there was the infamous removal of Talk Radio's channel by YouTube. My lords, when digital giants feel emboldened by government to shut down and censor MSM, there's surely no room for complacency about freedom of press. In this context, I am less than reassured by the constant references to the Online Safety Bill as a protector of media freedom. Hardly, my lords, when the bill would mandate and therefore empower big tech to remove so-called misinformation, all enforced by Ofcom. This is a recipe for censorship. Finally, there are new threats to a free press on the horizon. The media itself can be a victim of cancel culture. For example, the online Twitter mobs unleashed by the NGO Stop Funding Hate, whose strategy is to bully a variety of businesses to cancel advertising in certain media outlets, usually tabloids, more recently GB News. The idea of this is to punish financially or editorial wrongthink, and it's chilling. So I hope the committee will look at new threats to media freedom, and I regret that when they do that, one of the greatest threats they'll have to consider is the forthcoming online safety bill, unless some of us can stop it.
My Lords, I too would like to congratulate the Minister for his new